Welcome, everyone, to TechDaily.ai. This deep dive is sponsored by Stonefly, your trusted solution provider and advisor in enterprise storage, backup disaster recovery, hyper-converged VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox cluster, AI servers, SA365, a turnkey security appliance, and public and private cloud. Check out stonefly.com for more info. Today, we're diving into a head-to-head look at the free versions of two really big players in virtualization, VMware's ESXi and Proxmox.
That's right.
And the big question we're trying to tackle is, does ESXi still hold a real advantage over Proxmox, especially with all the recent changes? The ups and downs with the free license for ESXi and, well, how much Proxmox keeps improving.
It's a really interesting comparison now.
Yeah, our goal is really to unpack it for you, give you a clearer picture on which one might be the better fit, whether you're, say, setting up a home lab or maybe dealing with more complex IT stuff.
It's fascinating because, for a long time, ESXi was just dominant, especially for home server folks wanting to virtualize things. It was almost the default.
Right, the go-to choice.
Exactly. But you know how tech is. Things change. Proxmox came along as a strong competitor, different approach. And then that whole situation last year, Broadcom initially pulling the plug on the free ESXi license.
Oh, yeah, that caused a stir.
It really threw a wrench in the works, forced a lot of people to seriously look at alternatives. And even though the free license is back now, it definitely made people rethink things.
Okay, so ESXi had this solid reputation, especially in that home lab scene. What was the original draw? Why was it so popular back then?
Well, a huge factor was his enterprise background. I mean, for sysadmins, DevOps people, getting hands-on time with VMware at home was massive.
Because it's what they use at work.
Exactly. It's used in thousands, probably tens of thousands of data centers globally for decades. So that familiarity, the skills they learned tinkering at home, directly transferable to their jobs, that was a huge plus.
Makes perfect sense. Practice on the real deal, basically. Now, the info we look at also suggests ESXi had this reputation for a maybe more polished UI, easier to get into.
Yeah, that was the perception for many. The user interface felt perhaps a bit more streamlined, more intuitive, especially if you were already used to that kind of enterprise software look and feel.
Okay.
It was often described as having a gentler learning curve compared to Proxmox. Proxmox's web UI, while really powerful, tons of options, it could feel a bit intimidating at first. Lots of menus, lots to navigate.
So ESXi might have seemed like the easier starting point, especially if that enterprise skill building was your main goal. But the flip side seems to be some pretty significant downsides, particularly with the free version. What are the big hurdles people run into?
Hardware compatibility. That seems to be the recurring theme, and a real pain point, especially for home lab builders. The experiences shared point to real struggles getting ESXi to recognize common hardware, things like Ethernet controllers on certain motherboards, ASRock B550 mentioned, 10 gig network cards, even USB to Ethernet adapters.
So like everyday stuff people might repurpose.
Pretty much. Even NAS units or older server type systems. There was an exception noted like a Zima board with an Intel controller, but generally, it seems much happier with specific, often enterprise-grade components.
Right.
Which makes it tough if you just want to throw it on an old PC you have lying around.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
So you need specific, maybe more expensive hardware just to get started experimenting. And beyond the hardware lottery, there are limits in the actual free license itself, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. The free ESXi comes with some pretty key restrictions. Things like clustering, setting up multiple servers for high availability. That's a paid feature.
Okay, no HA clustering for free.
Nope. And also, there's that limit of 8 virtual CPUs, 8 vCores per virtual machine.
Ah, the 8-core limit. How limiting is that in practice?
It can be quite restrictive, yeah. Especially if you're trying to run more demanding VMs or maybe doing nested virtualization, running hypervisors inside hypervisors. That 8-core cap can hit you pretty quickly.
And then there's the elephant in the room we touched on, the uncertainty about the free license itself.
That's a really critical point, yeah. The whole Broadcom situation, terminating it, then bringing it back, it's created this sense of unease.
Understandably.
People are just cautious now about relying on it long-term for their home setups. There's that nagging worry, could it change again? Could it be pulled without much warning? It shakes your confidence.
Okay, so ESXi brings the enterprise familiarity, maybe a smoother initial UI, but you've got potential hardware headaches, license limitations, and this background uncertainty. Let's pivot to Proxmox then. What are its big strengths based on what we're seeing?
Proxmox really comes across as a platform that's, matured significantly. Lots of updates, very feature-rich now. And a key advantage is that many features ESXi gates behind a paywall, they're just free in Proxmox.
Like what specifically?
High availability clustering, for one. You can set that up without paying for licenses. And maybe even more importantly for many users, there's no artificial limit on CPU cores per VM.
Oh, wow. So you could throw as many cores as your hardware has at a VM.
Pretty much, yeah. Whatever your physical hardware supports. That's a massive difference from the 8V core limit in free ESXi, especially for demanding tasks.
That flexibility sounds huge.
Yeah.
What else makes Proxmox attractive?
Well, native ZFS support is a big one. Great for people running virtualized NAS setups or just wanting ZFS's data integrity features for their storage.
Right, ZFS is popular.
Very. Plus, Proxmox offers lots of customization options. It supports lightweight LXC containers right alongside your full VMs, which is neat. And there's a growing community building useful scripts to extend it easily.
And ecosystem support.
Yeah, that's growing too. Big players like Veeam now officially support backing up Proxmox nodes, and Proxmox has its own Proxmox backup server solution. It's building out a really solid ecosystem.
So it sounds like Proxmox gives you a lot more power and flexibility out of the box.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't want to deal with licensing hurdles in a home lab. What's the sort of overall assessment then? Where does each one fit best now?
The general vibe seems to ESXi's main pull now is really for people laser focused on a career in enterprise server management, just because it's still so prevalent there.
For the resume boost, basically.
Kind of, yeah. But even then, those hardware compatibility issues are a major hurdle. It's not just about the UI polish. Proxmox's free version is positioned as much more open, far less restrictive. The features you get for free are almost everything, minus like official enterprise support and repos.
Interesting. And are there other alternatives people mention?
Yeah, briefly. Some suggest other open source options like XCPing or Harvester might even offer better UIs than Proxmox for certain, maybe more production-focused needs. So it's not just a two-horse race.
Good point. Always good to know the other players. Let's dip into the community feedback now. What are users actually saying out there?
Well, a lot of people strongly pushed back on the idea that Proxmox is just for home labs anymore. Many are seeing it adopted in actual organizations now.
So it's moving up.
Seems like it. One user really highlighted the out-of-the-box advantages. Web UI, containers, clustering, no feature restrictions in the free version, just more flexible, less hassle for home labs without license worries. And yeah, lots of strong endorsements, just people saying Proxmox is the way.
Okay, strong Proxmox leanings in the community. Any other interesting takes or maybe counterpoints?
Definitely some strong feelings about Broadcom's handling of VMware. A lot of distrust expressed, predictions that this will push more people to alternatives like Proxmox long-term, especially as today's home labbers move into decision-making roles.
It's an interesting long-term perspective.
Yeah. And then there was a different view on ESXi's hardware fussiness. One person argued it's not really a flaw, it's by design. It's meant for stable, validated enterprise hardware, and trying to run it on random consumer stuff is kind of missing the point.
An argument for its stability focus, then.
Exactly. We also saw a quick correction confirming the free ESXi version is still available, clearing up some confusion. And maybe the most striking comment, someone called Proxmox the last server OS they'll ever install at home, said it even replaced their NAS boxes.
Wow.
And mentioned it's reportedly used by branches of the U.S. military for edge computing. So, quite the endorsement. And finally, someone just answered the headline question directly. Does free ESXi offer anything more than Proxmox? Their answer, just no. Citing Betteridge's law.
Huh. Okay, very direct. So, for you listening, what does this all really boil down to? It seems pretty clear the virtualization landscape, especially outside the big enterprise sphere, has shifted quite a bit. ESXi still has that enterprise recognition, maybe that UI some prefer initially, but the free version definitely comes with those clear limitations and hardware hurdles we talked about.
Exactly. And Proxmox, well, it's really stepped up. It's become this very robust, feature-packed platform, giving you a ton of capability for free, and it's built a strong, enthusiastic community.
And those concerns about ESXi's free license future are tied to Broadcom's past actions. They've clearly pushed people to look seriously at and often adopt alternatives like Proxmox.
No doubt about it.
So, hopefully, this deep dive gives you a much better handle on the current state of play. Ultimately, the best choice for you is going to hinge on your specific situation. What hardware do you have? What are your technical skills? What are your long-term goals? What factor really stands out to you as the most critical one here?
And maybe something to chew on after this. With open source solutions like Proxmox becoming so capable and flexible, how might that start influencing the strategies of the big proprietary players in the enterprise market down the road?
Good question.
It's a really dynamic space right now, and
Right.
the choice you make, even for a home lab today, could actually be part of a much bigger shift happening in the industry.